The iPhone 15 is now official and there's things we need to talk about, including what I'm excited and disappointed about and a mini long-term review of the iPhone 14 Pro. So, you may already know that one of the biggest things about the iPhone 15 series is the USB-C connector, which is a pretty big deal because it means you no longer need to have different cables at home or hunt for MFI Lightning cables. But I can guarantee you, you are going to be very confused with the large amount of USB-C cables in the market out there because seriously, every USB-C cables perform differently. So you got to make sure that you get the right USB-C cable in order to work properly with your iPhone 15. But thankfully, there isn't a special chip or source to enable certain features on the iPhones. However, the USB-C connector is really more exciting on the iPhone 15 Pro series. For one, it enables 10 gigabit per second transfer speeds, which will resolve large file transfer issues. And it supports display output so that you can output the camera's viewfinder to a larger external monitor for better framing. But to be honest, I was still disappointed because based on the rumors that we heard back then, the Pro models will get Thunderbolt 4 instead of just USB 3. I just couldn't wonder why, because Apple did include Thunderbolt 4 on the iPad Pros, and it's not like professional content creators can't take advantage of it. Because you could have easily attached faster storage devices and have videos recorded on it instead of extracting them out of your phone or upload to iCloud. Well, maybe that's one of the reasons that they introduced larger iCloud Plus storage of 6TB and 12TB. And that's one pretty smart move, but no thanks Apple. External SSDs are still more practical for storing my photos and videos. One old trick that Apple did again is to make the 5x telephoto zoom to be exclusive on the Pro Max like they do back on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Which I am a little disappointed because not everyone likes a bigger phone like the Pro Max. Though to give them credit, the titanium build does make the iPhone 15 Pro Max slightly lighter than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. And they didn't increase the thickness of the camera bump with the 5x telephoto camera. Despite that, I am super excited to try this out because the entire triple camera system allows for 7 different focal lengths, which will enable so many ways of framing your photos and videos, and this is something that Android phones have not done at all. And I like that fact that it can now shoot either 24 megapixels or 48 megapixel photos instead of going all up to 48 megapixel for higher res photos to save storage. Aside from that, the iPhone 15 Pro models have the new A70 Pro chip that I am super excited to try out games on. The iPhone is already such a great phone for gaming, and one thing that you gotta give them credit is how they work with big game developers to bring console-level games down to a smartphone form factor, which really gives Android gaming phones a big slap on the face. But of course, the iPhone 15 Pro costs way more than any flagship Android gaming phone, and the game titles that can really take advantage of the hardware is still limited for now. But the announcement of working with developers like Capcom and Ubisoft is a big sign that Apple is gradually going big on gaming with the iPhone. And I wouldn't be surprised that in a few years, some AAA game titles on PC can debut on iOS or macOS, considering how powerful Apple's silicon is. However, the one thing that Apple didn't mention in the launch is the battery life and cooling, which I am a little skeptical because back on my iPhone 14 Pro, I ran into serious battery drain issues after a while, and even though it isn't my main device which I rarely do overnight charging, the battery health is now at 97%, which is worse than what I have experienced back on the iPhone 13 Pro and 12 Pro Max. iPhones can also get really warm when you are gaming, so I'm hoping that Apple has made some improvements to the internals that makes heat dissipation better than before. Now, we've talked about the Pro models for a bit, let's talk about the regular iPhone 15, which I think is the default new iPhone that most people will go for. But considering the high starting price of the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus with 128GB of base storage, it becomes really expensive to recommend even if you can live without the Pro features. But that's not to say that it doesn't have anything to impress despite lacking an always-on display and 120Hz refresh rate display. As you get a much brighter display that pushes 2000 nits of peak brightness, an upgraded 48 megapixel main camera that offers an in-sensor 2x optical zoom, which has been proven to work really well back on the iPhone 14 Pro. So you are essentially still getting 3 cameras on the device even though it has 2 physical cameras on the back. You also get to shoot in 24 megapixels and 48 megapixels with the main cameras, which is good for saving storage if you ever need that resolution for reframing your shots. Like the iPhone 14, the iPhone 15 series uses the iPhone 14 Pro's A16 Bionic chip instead of the latest A17 Pro, which is fine by all means, and until today, my iPhone 14 Pro still works very well, and let's put it this way, you hardly find iPhone slowing down since the iPhone 11. So yeah, even if the A17 Pro has better graphics performance with ray tracing and all, you are still going to get a really decent experience on the iPhone 15 on every app and game you run on. As an iPhone 14 Pro user, I am definitely excited for the updates that Apple has made to the iPhone 15 lineup, and it made the iPhone 14 Pro a little outdated in some ways. But after using the phone for a year, this is still a pretty good phone aside from the poor battery endurance that I had, and it still uses the good old Lightning connector. And despite that, I would be so wrong to tell you that the iPhone 15 and 15 Pro isn't a good upgrade. Because unlike the iPhone 13 and 14, the iPhone 15 series really brings significant and meaningful updates to the table, whether you go for the regular or Pro model. Of course, the iPhone 15 series are expensive, and there's a chance that you might be upgrading from a much older iPhone. Apple is still keeping the iPhone 14 and iPhone 13 with the same storage options as before, and these are still great devices that still perform well and has a stellar camera system that performs on par with today's flagship phones. And ultimately, it all depends whether you care about those advanced camera features and a new dynamic island front face. But sad news here is that Apple removed the iPhone 13 mini from the lineup, so if you still want to buy them, you can't RIP to that. So yeah, that's all for my thoughts on the iPhone 15. It's a mixture of excitements and disappointments. I can't wait to get my own unit for a review soon, so stay tuned for that and stay subscribed. Let me know what you think about them in the comments, and I'll talk to you in the next one.